I have Jack Gitlin on the podcast today and some of his entrepreneurial journey as a commercial broker. Jack, I appreciate you taking some of the tools that you've learned over the years as being an entrepreneur, and just want to find out more about you and your business. If you could give us a background on how you got into commercial real estate.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Happy to discuss. Yeah, so I was an analytics major at Elon University, which is over in North Carolina. And then the decision was, where do I deploy that analytics degree? I landed on commercial real estate, just talking with a few mentors, which was kind of the big defining moment of my career, is deciding to do commercial real estate. After talking with a few people looking at a few different industries, decided commercial real estate was the path for me. But like you guys know, it's almost impossible to break into commercial real estate if you don't know anyone. It's really difficult. So just sending out LinkedIn applications, talking to as many people that would talk to me. And I was talking to someone, they mentioned they use this commercial real estate analytics platform called CoStar. I should take a look at that. So I worked at CoStar for about 2 years, which was in Richmond, Virginia, doing market research. You're assigned a market. You really drill down on kind of what makes that market move, analytics for that market. So you really are only focused on your specific market, which was great training, working with brokers and doing market research for those areas, which eventually led me to Newmark here in Denver. One thing that's really important about commercial real estate is once you set your roots in a market, a lot of it's relationship based and a lot of it is understanding the market. So it's tough to leave once you've set your roots somewhere. So I knew after CoStar, I wanted to set my roots somewhere. I chose Denver and I only looked for jobs in Denver, Colorado, which led me to Newmark. I became an analyst there on the institutional brokerage team, which basically means that all the deals that we were doing were with the institutions, the Goldman Sachs, the Unicos. So it was larger deals. But again, I was doing a lot of market research. So building the OMs, the offering memorandums, the BOVs that we would supply to owners, and doing market research that kind of kept our team afloat. And then from there, decided we were working on big deals. It was great. But at that point, I needed to get my own experience learning the deals from head to toe. And that's what landed me to become my own broker here at Unique Properties here in Denver.
Here at Unique, are you on a team?
Yes. So I'm on a team here at Unique, which is a perfect situation. My boss is now actually currently the CEO of our company, but he started in my exact position as a broker and kind of worked his way up the ladder to now kind of find himself as a CEO, but still a broker. He owns his own construction company. So coming to work for him was a big determining factor of where I wanted to go. There's a few different brokerage shops that I looked at, and this felt like the best fit for me, mainly because I knew it was where I could learn the most and kind of drink from a fire hose and learn as much as possible, as soon as possible, which is the ultimate goal of your first few years into brokerage, just to learn how deals work, what makes the needle move, and kind of how to best position yourself and how to make relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. How important do you think mentorship been in your career?
Mentorship is a big part of your career. When you're in commercial real estate, having someone older that you can bounce ideas off of is really important. There's so many different directions you can go. You can be in debt, and within debt, there's a million different avenues that you can go into. You can be on the ownership side, and you can be a broker, and there's a million different paths within that to go. You can be a transaction coordinator. You can be an analyst. So I think personally, having a good understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses, presenting that clearly to a mentor, and then having them kind of be able to guide you and give you advice to point you in the right direction. Obviously, at the end of the day, you've got to take ownership of your own career and make these decisions for yourself. But you really don't know where the strengths and weaknesses are going to lie when you're entering the business. So having someone that you can say, look, I love being with people and I love learning about my market, and maybe some deeper strengths of yours, this is where you should go. I actually know a contact at this company. Why don't you talk to him for advice? And maybe that leads somewhere. And then you talk to them for advice. And then from that conversation, you get maybe 2 more contacts. And that's how it builds organically, which is exactly what you're looking for. Something that I've done is I really enjoy learning from my boss here at Unique. He's someone that I speak to very regularly about my own career and the market, how to best position myself, and he's given me some great advice. But I also have a mentor that's a family friend that I discuss some things about my company with. And it's nice to have that balance of this guy's with me every day. He's in the market and he knows how to best position himself. But sometimes you need to go this route and say, am I getting the best advice from this person? What do you think of what they said here? So I think that's a great way to position yourself with a mentor that you're working with day in and day out, but also someone that you can bounce ideas off of outside of your company that just has your best interest in mind and maybe not even the company's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I know for myself, I always had two coaches. I used to have one coach that was specifically in my industry. And then I always had a coach that was basically outside of my industry to try to get some other ideas. There's a genius marketer out there, and he says, if you can do things that other companies are doing that are successful that are not in your business, that's where you can see some of that exponential growth versus sometimes when you're just doing what the coach is saying that's in your business, if everybody else is doing that same thing. So that's why I always like to have like two different coaches. So that's awesome that you have those two different mentors. What was it like making that transition, from Newmark to Unique and kind of going, in essence, like I would say more entrepreneurial, right? You're not probably getting the salary that you were at Newmark as an analyst. What was that transition like? And, what were some of the fears and how'd you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was at Newmark and with larger companies that are publicly traded companies with CoStar and Newmark for years, and that was my whole career. And so taking a leap and going to a private company, a smaller company that's more regional, and it's all on my shoulders was a big jump. And in a sense, it was kind of like starting your career over because now it's all on your shoulders. There's no one giving you the work. You've got to bring the business for yourself and then also figure out kind of how to well execute for your owners and the people that are kind of taking a chance on you. So that was nerve-wracking for sure, but I think the only way to do it is to jump right in. And I was leaving Newmark at a time where interest rates were rising drastically, commercial transaction volume was decreasing drastically, and everyone said it's not a good time to leave, enjoy the security, and maybe wait a year or two before you make that switch. But the problem is that there's never going to be the perfect time. Once the market ramps back up, then you haven't spent that time making those connections. You haven't learned anything new on the brokerage side. So there's no better time than the present to jump in. It was the perfect time for me. I've spent the last few years making these connections. And now in a market like this, where it's not a booming market per se, this is at a time where people need your help. They need advice and they want brokers that really care about you to point you in the right direction. A lot of people, let's say you took on debt a few years back and now that loan is maturing and you have a 3-4% loan and you're going to have to refinance it to a 7-8% loan. You've got some real decisions to make. We've got business owners that we're meeting with daily, weekly, that have real decisions to make, and they really need your advice now more than ever. So it's never the perfect time, but it's always the right time, I would say, to make a switch and kind of just jump in head first.
That obviously comes back to kind of like the mindset piece. What do you feel like are the biggest takeaways that you've had in regards to mindset since you've made that transition?
I think there's a balance in kind of keeping your head down, but really looking around and seeing what's around you. A lot of this job is reaching out, cold calling, cold emailing, door knocking, meeting new people wherever you can at these NAR, NAOP conventions, going to these different happy hours, and meeting as many people as you can. So you just kind of want to keep your head down, work, but you also want to poke up, see what's around you, see what's working. Talk to people that have been in the business. Talk to people that are close to what you're doing. If they're getting wins, figure out how they're getting those wins and really kind of balance that to think about the mindset, because that's a good question.
My next question was going to kind of be like rituals, habits, routines, like that keep a positive mindset.
So here's one thing I'll say about the mindset is I think being in commercial real estate and especially being in brokerage, you need to have a lot of confidence in your own abilities because you're going to be banging your head against the wall for days on end and maybe not get that many wins, maybe not make that many connections, even though you're doing everything right. If you believe in your abilities and you know what you can do, then that's what's going to keep you going at the end of the day, because a lot of brokers quit at the end of the day. I believe Colorado, per 1,000 jobs, has the highest number of brokers of any state, beating Florida, California, and Texas, which you would think would have a higher pro rata share of brokers. But sure, there's competition out there, but if you know and you know that you're confident in your abilities and you're doing this for the right reasons, you're going to have success. It's going to come with time, and you just got to keep your head down and keep working on that because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's huge. I know for me, there was so many times where I'm like, should I just quit and work for a bank? And
Yep.
like literally, it was like a constant battle of like, man, am I doing the right thing? And just kept moving forward, kept making progress. Are you seeing work for you in your industry right now that might translate for somebody that might not be directly in your industry, but like sales techniques or strategies are you using that you feel like are working for you in your industry?
Well, I think one thing that I do have going for me naturally is I genuinely want the best for the clients that I'm working with. I think you can't really fake that. And if they sense that you're just trying to push them into a deal to get the deal closed, they can see right through that. And then you lose all trust. And that's what this is about. You've got to really have their back to get good results. So if you're coming into it looking to help, then you're going to have success. But if you're just trying to get deals done, push paper, then it's not going to move that quickly. I think one thing that really helped me is my path before Unique. So at CoStar, I really had to learn how to cold call, make connections with thousands of brokers in my market, make sure all their information was up to date, and make sure that the analytics checked out, because we're checking that on the back end. And then at Newmark, we had to be really diligent and detail oriented to make sure that everything that we're sending out is right. When you're working on 100, 200, $150 million deals, if there's one tiny mistake, that can be a difference of millions of dollars for the clients that trust you and respect you. And now you've got your boss's reputation on the line. You can't play with that. So everything needs to be perfect, right? And you need to know everything off the top of your head in case anything comes up. So having a balance of knowing how to make connections with thousands of brokers in a market while also being extremely detail oriented has really prepared me, because you need to make as many connections as possible. You can't rely on one person or two people to carry you. Maybe way down the line you can't, but especially at the beginning, you need to keep every avenue possible open. But the only way that these individuals are going to trust you is if you're right, you're on top of it, you know your stuff. So anyone getting started, I learn as much as you can about the market. And that starts with learning about individual sales. Why are they trading for that number? Why did this trade for double the amount that this did if they're a similar property type? What makes a building more user-friendly? Where are cap rates sitting? Where are interest rates sitting? And understanding zoning codes. And that way you can really understand the scope of the project that you're working on and accurately guide your client in the right direction, which is what they're looking for at the end of the day. And they can see through if you don't know what you're talking about. So just being well prepared.
Yeah, that's awesome. I used to tell my team, like, people can feel when you care. And basically that just permeates through the whole thing. And I went out to the #1 sales trainer in the country. And that was the moral of what he said is like, care for people. And number two, like, sometimes they're not always making the best decision for themselves. So it's like our job sometimes, to basically help them convey what it is a good decision, as long as in the best interest of them. I'm helping you in the right direction. And to just like move on from a client was a huge learning point that I learned from this sales trainer. That's awesome that you've got that caring for clients down early on. And one thing that you had said to me about Newmark, and you brought it up again in that last answer, is just creating a great customer experience and how big the number at that level, how like the detail and a customer experience translated into your work with the smaller individual owners now.
Yeah. And I will say right now, a lot of the deals that are trading are smaller deals, a lot of small business owners. There's a lot of friction in the market right now. So maybe the investment sales are penciling with interest rates where they are. It's tough to get these cap rate deals to pencil, but a lot of business owners, they need more space. They need less space. They need a bit more yard. They just need to change it up, because the last few years have been really interesting for a lot of businesses. So understanding their needs and then applying that to what you know about the market. That way you can go into the meeting knowing exactly what they need from you. So if you come into the meeting and they say, I need X, Y, and Z, but that's not out there, you need to completely reshift the way they're thinking about it. If they're saying, I need a 20,000 square foot auto repair, it can't be too expensive, it has to be in good shape, it needs a paint booth and this, I tell you, you're probably better off maybe even just converting a warehouse building into what you need and getting creative. That way you can best assist your clients on the back end, because if you just meet with them and you say I'll send you a few listings, and now you're sending them 8,000 square foot listings that don't even come close to meeting their criteria. This guy has no sense of what's going on with the market. He doesn't know what's best for me. And I'm just going to take my business elsewhere. There's no hard feelings, but I'm going to take my business to someone that I can trust and has been there before. So being diligent, being on top, learning from everything that you do is going to help pay it forward to the next deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And would you say on this question, and it might not be something that you guys are seeing directly, but is there anything that you or your company is doing to currently innovate and think differently or do business differently right now?
Well, I think that in times of transition in the market, it's a time to be aggressive. None of us are taking our foot off the gas pedal. In fact, it's about as hard as we can push it right now. I'm not missing a broker event or a client event where I could potentially meet people. I've got a few listings on South Broadway here in Denver right now. If there's a South Broadway meeting of any sort, I've got to be there and make sure that your clients really know that you're putting your best foot forward. When deals are happening every day, it doesn't matter as much how much you're in front of them because they know that you're transacting. But if you're in a market where very few people and very few brokers especially are making deals happen, they want to see that you're active, that you're out there, and then put it in front of people. Be your best advertisement. Go to these meetings, talk about your deals, talk about what you learned, talk about the troubles you went to. We just closed a deal on West 6th that we didn't know, but in the 1920s, there was dry cleaners on the block, which comes through for a ton of environmental concerns. So now I'm talking to the local business owners about what they can do to best mediate that. It wasn't a big concern for our deal. How can they Can they get over this? They're going to have to spend maybe $14,000 on a phase 2 at closing, but it's nice to know that up front. So applying your knowledge on these specific deals to other deals when you've learned them, talk about your wins in public, and just stay in front of people.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I talked to another business owner and he's like, I'm getting back to the basics and it's just making sure I'm staying face to face in the valley with people and making those relationship connections. So that's awesome that you're kind of doing that same thing.
From every angle, because I'm writing letters now. People so appreciate a handwritten letter. When you close a deal, call the neighbors. Mm-hmm. When you list a deal, call the neighbors. Tell them about where properties are being priced in the area. Tell them why. If it's not good news, then you don't need to make it sound like it's good news. Tell them this is the way it is. This is why. But we're having wins in the market. We just got this listed. We've gotten 3 calls. We've had 2 tours in the week that we've had it listed. Do you know what your property's worth? And just start there. Make a connection. Make sure that he's well taken care of and he knows the situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you feel like, if you can kind of think back to what do you feel like has been the most challenging time in your career? And then how did you navigate that?
It's a good question. I think that when I was at the end of my run at Newmark, that was probably my toughest time because I had done market research for my whole career. And I felt like I had a great offering within myself, but there was just nowhere for it to go in its current situation. And now I'm entering a market where there's not a ton of jobs out there. And I can either stay and do more market research and a lot of the same, but I felt like I had completed that path and wasn't learning the way I needed to be anymore. But do I just jump out and take on a full new experience, maybe even take a step back? It turned out to be the best thing for me. I love what you said earlier about the entrepreneurial aspect of brokerage. It allows you to open up so many doors. And one thing that I'm really excited for is you really get an understanding of value. And that allows you to potentially down the line, once you've closed enough deals, buy some properties for yourself. And then once you own assets, if you own a vacant asset, you understand what the exact psychology of the owners you're working with, how to best position it. Now you're in their head. And that's the ultimate long-term goal of this, is to be multifaceted in commercial real estate.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know for me, real estate's been a huge kind of cornerstone of my financial path for sure. So that's awesome that you're thinking that way. What trends do you see in the market or the economy or in commercial real estate that you kind of see coming in the near future? Like what trends or market conditions, what are you forecasting or seeing?
One interesting one is we just had this seminar about industrial outdoor storage properties, and especially in Denver, Commerce City, and the surrounding cities for Denver. A lot of the local municipalities are trying to get rid of the outdoor storage properties because they're not as aesthetic from street view. If you've got a bunch of trailers parked outside on a lot and in a yard, it's not the greatest look for the block, but we really need those now more than ever with the rise of e-commerce and logistics. So those properties are getting harder and harder to find. They're not getting, the supply isn't growing. And as that comes to be, the space is getting way more institutionalized. So a lot of the bigger institutions are taking on these smaller deals because they know industrial outdoor storage is a great opportunity. And especially right now, this has only come to be in the last 2 or 3 years. and there's not a lot of price discovery. If you ask five different brokers from five different firms about what industrial outdoor storage land itself goes for, you're going to get five different answers because there's so much range right now and there's not a lot of price discovery. So that provides an opportunity to come in if you're buying assets to buy something where the supply isn't growing and the demand is growing rapidly.
Okay, nice. That's cool to kind of have that intricate detail of maybe a certain niche. And then I love technology. I know that it seems like some of the older generation hasn't embraced technology, but I feel like a lot of young entrepreneurs, are highly utilizing technology. Are there any great technologies that you guys have incorporated in your business that you think, might translate to another business? Anything that's works well, technology?
Yeah, I would say learning how to use all of your resources together to piggyback on top of each other. I think one thing that's really important to know for commercial real estate is how to dig through public record, how to find what you need to find for certain properties, and even knowing what are the right questions to be asking. I think CoStar prepared me well for that, where a lot of your metrics at CoStar are not, if you can find this, great. It's, you need to find this. And if you don't, you're not going to hit your numbers, whether or not it's even possible to find out. So you've got to get creative, call an assessor. Maybe they'll lead you to a different number and just keep digging through that information. That is really important. CoStar in itself is a great resource. I wouldn't say it's the end all be all, but it's a great starting point for almost any question that you're going to have. You can take it to CoStar, and if you know how to navigate through that, there's a lot of good information that you could pull that maybe a lot of other people aren't seeing. They have historical information dating back 20, 30 years. So getting the full scope of a property is so important when selling or even talking to a property owner to understand what it's been through. Mm-hmm. If you know that, like I said, it was a dry cleaner in the past, there's going to be some environmental concerns that will be costly during due diligence. If you know certain things about its previous use, it was a former marijuana growery, and now it's got ample power. Now we can stick this new user here because it can support their power. So historical information through CoStar is great. But I would say using all the resources you have. Here at Unique, I'm fortunate to have access to a lot of good databases and know how to dig through public records. So it's able to connect the dots because it's not all going to be in one place. I found this piece of information here. That's a clue. Then now I can go look through public record and find the information I need.
Yeah, when I'm starting with a client, I usually tell them, in the beginning, the data is probably one of the most important things that you can get. Because if you're trying to do sales marketing bad data, you're wasting a ton of time. So if you can get a good list of who you're going to be contacting is really a huge key in regards to doing good sales and marketing. So that's something that we've looked at. So that's cool that you guys have good data sources and you're using CoStar to dig up some of that data. That's awesome. And any final remarks or advice that you have to young entrepreneurs that are kind of early on in their career? What kind of final remarks or advice would you have for entrepreneurs?
I think that I touched on this earlier, but something that's really served me well is balancing attention to detail while also keeping my head down and making results quickly. So in this industry, if you get a new listing, you can't wait 3 weeks to throw it up on the market or tell anyone about it, because by that point it's too late. You've wasted a lot of time and the market's changing week by week right now. If you get something, you need to get it out there fast, but all that information that you're getting out there needs to be right. So balancing your diligence with timeliness is really important. And that's something that doesn't go unnoticed by your clients. And that's something that'll take you a long way. I'd also say learning from your experiences is really important, and being organized with the work you're doing. Don't replicate it. You've already done it. Keep it on hand. And when you need to reach back out to it as a reference, you have it on hand. And you understand why all these moves were made, understand the lateral moves. And if you're working on something, understand why you're doing it. If you're ordering something, why am I doing it? If you just put this amount of money into a property, why did ownership do that? Why do they do all these moves? And then you understand the lateral moves that come with it and kind of the intrinsic value that they're trying to accomplish with that. And then that's, again, going to put you more in the psychology of ownership and your clients.
Awesome. Well, a ton of great words of wisdom. I really appreciate all the time that you spent today. And yeah, super appreciate it.
Absolutely, Matt. Great talking to you.